What was up with Bijan Robinson disappointing his fantasy managers? And how about Jahmyr Gibbs breaking out at the same time? We break down our biggest Week 7 Sunday reactions for fantasy football as we begin another edition and another week of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast, where your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
All right, Michelle, we will get into some of the biggest storylines here. We got 9 things to look at here. A lot of things happened on Sunday. A lot of things disappointed, but a lot of things also pleased us here. So we'll break those down for you. Before we get into that, Michelle, I think the Sunday night game pretty much went like we expected, maybe just not as many points maybe from the Dolphins side, but I thought the Eagles matched up well against them, and they put up some points there.
Yeah, this is the second hard game the Dolphins have had. They got beaten up by the Bills and now beaten up against the Eagles. So the Dolphins are one of those teams that are going to destroy the bad teams in the league, but it's yet to be seen if they're actual Super Bowl contenders. Tyreek Hill still did his thing. Jalen Waddle can't stay healthy, so that has to be very frustrating for his fantasy managers. I feel like this has happened throughout his entire career. There's so many games where he ends up leaving for a period of time or ends up missing games altogether. So that's just his injuries are starting to pile up and worry me. But Tyreek Hill is just a monster. It doesn't matter who they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, he's just the man right now, and if Waddle's hurt and Devin Chan is hurt, he's going to get more and more of the love here, especially if the running game gets shut down with Reed Mostert. Now, speaking of the running game getting shut down, this is self-shutting down here for the Falcons. I know you have Bijan on some of your teams, Bijan Robinson. I've got him on a key team as well that I needed to win badly yesterday, and said, okay, this is okay. It's a tough matchup on paper against the Buccaneers, but I think he can do things. And then I'm watching the box score. He's not getting touches. He's not on the field. There's no explanation. That really bothers me when I don't have an explanation. He ends up with 6 first half snaps. Then randomly, he gets a carry on the last drive of the game as they drive down to get a field goal and win the game by Younghoe Koo. He ends up with 11 total snaps. I don't know what's going on. I wrote about it. I guess the answer was at the end, he wasn't feeling great and he had a headache, and this happened Saturday, and we didn't know about it till Sunday, till mid-game after the game.
There's no one more infuriating than Arthur Smith. There's really not. There's no reason this wasn't known before the game. There's no reason to make him active. If he was actually dealing with a migraine, or they say such a bad headache, he can't. But also then you gave him a carry at the end of the game. Like, why?
What doesn't make sense?
If he's dealing with a migraine, let him rest. Like, there's no reason he's sitting out there with his gear on and he's struggling. I think there's something more to this. Now, they did come out and say his workload will not be impacted whatsoever moving forward. But this stinks. I mean, the running backs ran a total of 33 times. This would have been a great game for Bijan. He would have had a lot of opportunities. And what also stinks is that they won the game, right? So Arthur Smith is going to think he was a great coach. He's going to see nothing wrong with his usage with Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. And he's just going to be like, well, he won the game. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe he'll get a little bit back here. I like the matchup this week because it's Mike Vrabel coming off a bye. He knows Arthur Smith well. He's not going to play for these shenanigans, right? He's going to know Arthur Smith, you're boring if you do this and come in. I'm going to figure you out and beat you. So maybe that's what's going to happen this week. I don't love it because it's not a great matchup for Bijan, at least as a runner. He's going to have to do it more as a receiver this week, but it was just a bummer. I don't like those type of situations at all. Like, I don't mind. Okay, I see the guy. He has an injury in the middle of the game. He's ruled out. That just happens, right? That you just roll with that. But now you're under the impression the guy is available and can do things. I get it. The situation was developing and it got worse as the game went on, but seems very bizarre to me. And I think, look, I just
But
wish
if
the
it was
information
getting
was
worse
better.
as the game went on, he shouldn't have been
Yeah.
out on the field.
There should
So
have been just
everything
more information, is my thing. It's like,
yeah.
if you knew about it Saturday, if you weren't feeling well, at least somebody should have
But
alerted
also the
it or said,
broadcast wasn't talking about it at all. Like, they
yeah,
weren't getting
it's very
answers
annoying.
from the Falcons sideline. Nothing like we didn't know what was going on until well into I feel like the second half. It's like everything was mum. And then I feel like they just came up with this whole thing. I'm sure he wasn't feeling well, but I don't know. Something sketchy there. But
Yeah,
to move on from Bijan, because that was
yes, I
irritating
think we need
enough
to.
to deal with, there were some really good running backs this week of guys that had to fill in for injured running backs. And if you trusted them, you were rewarded. So, one you brought up to start the podcast, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean,
The
it's
other
so
rookie.
great to finally see him break out without David Montgomery here. Now, this week, the Lions get the Raiders, but then a bye. So we might only get one more week without David Montgomery with Jahmyr Gibbs, but fantastic to see him used so much, especially in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at Jahmyr Gibbs, and this is the reason why I was really high on him. I didn't really trust David Montgomery to stay healthy because he's had a lot of injuries in the past, and I thought it might take an injury to David Montgomery to really make them unlock Jahmyr Gibbs, and it did. And go figure, it was in a game where it was a negative game script, right? They got blown out of the building, and maybe the Ravens were just like, okay, if you're going to run the ball and throw it to your running back, we're up by a ton. It doesn't matter. He can get all the yards he wants. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in a situation like the Raiders game, right? Where they should be playing with the lead. It's a very bad run defense, so they should be able to run, right? And I don't know if you'll see Jahmyr Gibbs used in the same way if the script is positive. So we want to follow that up, right? And make sure that he's the early down feature back in this type of game because again, it was nice that there was enough garbage time where again he could do whatever he wanted. The Ravens weren't all that concerned with his numbers, so that's what I like to see. I like that they used him in the red zone to finish things here. So really good situation. Now the other situation was weird was Donta Foreman, and this bugs me so much because we were on Roshan Johnson, and unfortunately, this concussion is pretty severe if you're out for 2 weeks.
Apparently, I mean, who
Yeah,
it was like he almost was there was like reports that maybe he was going to be able to play that very following week because that
yeah.
game that he got the concussion was on a Thursday. So he ended up having to miss that game, but you never normally miss 2 games with a concussion unless you have a long history of concussions, especially when the one injury happened on a Thursday to give you those
Yeah.
extra few days. I don't that this concussion must be really serious here, and I was completely shocked that he was out for this game.
Yeah, Foreman, he is a closer, by the way. When he comes in and he has a big game, it doesn't matter what team he's on. If they're winning and he has a big game, it's usually a great result for his team, right? That's usually the case. I mean, we've seen it before as he filled in for Derrick Henry. We saw it last year filling in for Christian McCaffrey. This guy is just one of those like hired guns who comes in. If everyone else gets hurt, and you need to win a game and you can run the ball in a team, he's going to get the job done. But then he can easily disappear if they go behind in a game. That's it. That said, if Johnson has to sit out another game, it's the Chargers this week, a very good matchup. So I like that. Gibbs follows up with the Raiders. You got Foreman following up with the Chargers. So good opportunities there for those guys. And now, Michelle, the Rams backfield, we told you about Zach Evans. I knew something was going to happen where he was not going to be the guy. He was absolutely not the guy. It was Darrell Henderson back on the team and Royce Freeman. They both ran well. The difference was that Henderson got a few more bursty runs and the touchdown here, but Henderson looked pretty good. So, look, it could easily go in a different direction for the next game. They play the Cowboys, which is not a great rushing matchup here in week 8. But look, I guess you had to go with Henderson because he's the guy that maybe Sean McVay knows how he's going to produce, right? I think that's what ended up happening, even though Royce Freeman might have been the better pass protector. And I think you saw him in those type of situations.
I'm 100% on the Darrell Henderson train. Hopefully, you guys follow me on Twitter because I know when we did our running back rankings, I said I was on Evan Hall at that moment. But as soon as I signed Darrell Henderson to the practice squad, I moved over to Darrell Henderson. I tweeted out that Darrell Henderson is the guy you play in this Rams backfield. So hopefully, follow me from now on. If you don't on Twitter, it's at Bob Blastum. So you can get those updates throughout the week. But I mean, you have Henderson having experience with Sean McVay. And as soon as he hasn't played all year long. He hasn't played in a long time, right? Because he didn't even play at the end of last season. And he came in, got 18 carries right away. I think his workload just continues to increase while we see Royce Freeman's go down as time progresses here with Kyron Williams out. And now he's placed on IR. So you get 3 more games from Henderson.
Until they pull the rug from under him and Sean McVay gets tired of him and says, we're going with another back. So it's always something to watch, right? I mean, he is so fickle with his backs. Like if they miss one thing or he gets Matthew Stafford killed on a play, that's it. Like they'll be going, we just need Matthew Stafford to stay upright for his 50-plus pass attempts, and that could be the case against the Cowboys this week. I think that's definitely a scenario that could play out against that defense. So let's move on here to National Tight End Day. It actually continues, I think, on Monday. We'll have George Kittle and TJ Hawkinson do their thing tonight in the same game. We have an interesting thing that we looked at with PrizePicks, combining their yardage. But how about this? Travis Kelce with you-know-who in the house, cheering on with you-know-who's wife. They were having fun in the box. Travis Kelce was going off. Of course, he had to dominate tight end today. He almost had 200 receiving yards. If they were in a little closer game, I think you might have seen that. He was just wide open, running free, roaming wherever he wanted against the Chargers. It was pretty pathetic to watch their defense try to stop him. Then you had Mark Andrews score twice. Darren Waller blow up. These were the top 3 tight ends of the week. Dallas Goedert is back doing his thing again. It's looking great at tight end all over the league with these top guys of all of a sudden. So if you drafted these guys in order, you're getting the results right now through Hawkinson, Kittle. We'll see what they do tonight. But, man, these other guys are right where you drafted them, and the reason why we banged the table for Waller and some of these guys right after the big 2.
Yeah, they everyone came through. Darren Waller getting his first touchdown of the year was awesome. And then also just the targets and the receiving yards. We kind of want Tyrod Taylor to keep showing up for Darren Waller instead of Daniel Jones coming back. Also, Dalton Kincaid definitely needs to be mentioned. 8 targets, 8 receptions, 75 receiving yards. Breakout game for him this week. Tight end 6 on the week so far. But I just want to bring up Kelce so far because what he's done over the last 3 weeks is absurd. Kelce and Mahomes have combined for 31 receptions on 33 targets, 377 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kelce's the only tight end to have 30-plus receptions over a 3-game span since at least 1970 by a tight end. What he's doing right now over these last 3 games is crazy. And if you drafted him in the first round, you're extremely happy.
Yeah, he's rejuvenated for sure. You want to impress when someone's up there watching you, and you want to put on a show. Everyone is watching this game. So that's what I like, is they're rising to the occasion and realizing their moment and their crossover, and they're not disappointing. And look, it could be a lot of pressure that could go the other way, right? Maybe lose some concentration, but he hasn't done that. He just keeps bringing it every week. And I also have to mention Mark Andrews, this is his second 2-touchdown game of the year. Like Lamar Jackson now looks super locked in as well. I mean, so you see Kelce and Mahomes, but Lamar Jackson played really well yesterday as well. So these combinations are going to work. And I do have to say, Michelle, I think I want Tyrod Taylor out there more for the Giants.
Really do.
It really helped some of these receivers. So maybe that was the key. We heard all about Daniel Jones and Darren Waller, but I think Tyrod Taylor just doesn't make mistakes and puts the ball in the hands of playmakers. So I'm excited. Tight ends are back. They're not as gross. I mean, you've mentioned what Kincaid did. We know Sam Laporta has been around. Michael Mayer could do more. Luke Musgrave, unfortunately, got hurt, but look, it's been a better position of late, and maybe it all started with Taysom Hill Thursday doing his thing on the tight end day eve weekend, so whatever. So good stuff there from him. Now we will get into 6 more storylines here that we look at from the action of Week 7 Sunday from the fantasy football fallout. We'll do that for you. Before we do that, we have an early edition here for our eBay Guaranteed Fit Pick of the Week. That's right. You're getting it on a Monday here. It's the eBay Guaranteed Fit pick of the week for fantasy. Here, our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with us on Locked On Fantasy Football to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily fantasy football draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with the players who are guaranteed to fit on your roster and deliver in your lineup. Let's see who we have our picks headed toward this week. It is Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson. The Jets were on a bye in week 7. He's got good momentum after the nice game before the bye. Zach Wilson should be a little bit better. And it could be another big game, maybe the biggest of the season, coming against the Giants in Week 8. Start spreading the news. New York, that's the battle this week. The Giants secondary cannot cover him well and already given up big games to Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. Yep, those are big names. So is Garrett Wilson. He's a great talent, and the Jets are now back to using him as a dominant number 1. Look for him to keep coming through with his best all-around game yet in fantasy in 2023. eBay Motors knows that it's important to have a great fit here, and we believe that too. We're going to help you win your fantasy football championship, and it's about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same thing with your vehicle. With more than 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. And at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So check it out there. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right, Michelle. So we'll wait for Garrett Wilson to return here and give us some more fantasy love in week 8. One player who did not, if you started him and you looked at that Colts matchup and said, oh, your shoulder is okay, we're going to put him in, Deshaun Watson. It was brutal to watch him. He didn't look good. He threw an interception. Then he hit the turf at Lucas Oil pretty hard, and that was it. He was out. PJ Walker back in, and somehow for a second straight game, the Browns win with basically doing nothing in the passing game. So it's ugly. I mean, Elijah Moore already said it's droppable. David Njoku's unplayable, droppable. Amari Cooper, though, disappeared as well. So I don't know what to do, Michelle. This is just pretty bad. I mean, now you also lose Jerome Ford in the running game. So really, I think it's just down to Kareem Hunt that you can trust as long as Watson is out.
It's pretty crazy that, they allowed so many points, right? The Browns defense, because the Browns defense has been incredible. And Myles Garrett was incredible in this game and definitely messing things up. And they did have the defensive touchdown still. So they scored some points that way. But the fact that they won this game with PJ Walker doing nothing, with just really nobody on offense doing anything, and they put up 39 points. It doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, now it's 2 weeks in a row with Cleveland winning with PJ Walker. Deshaun Watson was cleared with the concussion, but didn't come back in. And it's not like they were saying he can't come back in because of the shoulder. They did say it tightened up a little bit, but it seemed more like they just wanted PJ Walker in this game instead of Watson. I mean, Watson was 1 for 5 before leaving. He had the 1 interception, really had 2, but the Colts guy just kind of dropped it just slightly when it hit the ground. So they called that back. But he was not looking good, that's for sure. So I wonder if they're going to sit Watson again. And PJ Walker with Amari Cooper, they were not having it against the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, there was a good matchup too. The Colts secondary, they actually caught themselves poorly near the end of the game, had those multiple penalties by Darrell Baker, and that basically gave the Browns the game. I mean, they should have no
I
business
mean, the
winning
refs
that game.
handed the Browns that game.
There's no way they should have won that game, and it's probably going to come unraveling here. They've been held together by duct tape with all their injuries, and it's going to come to a head here in Seattle. Seattle played really well defensively against the Cardinals, and that's where they have to go on this long road trip. I'm not going to trust PJ Walker to come through his 3rd straight time in that matchup, and actually the Seahawks are getting a little bit tougher there. So without Watson, you got to fade everyone. And again, Jerome Ford going down, we will talk about that a little bit later and how you want to approach that backfield with that injury. Now, The Bills offense, we mentioned Dalton Kincaid. He was a leading receiver. He caught all of his targets there against the Patriots. Stephon Diggs did find the end zone, but our guy, Gabe Davis, second straight clunker for him as a big play threat, not getting in the end zone. Josh Allen, just kind of a little bit all over the place. He still does enough to compile his numbers. James Cook somehow did find the end zone, but this just seems like a very disjointed, random Bills offense. And if it's not Josh Allen running around making plays, and Diggs is not there, it seems like it's random and you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, now Gabe Davis has had 2 weeks where he's completely disappeared, so now he's gonna be hard to trust
Yeah.
moving forward. He's always gonna be one of those guys that he has a super high ceiling, we know that, and he can get into the end zone any given week. I mean, it basically was every week to start the year until the last couple weeks, but 14 points against the Giants in week 6. They did score 25 against the Patriots, but it's like they started so slow. Their offense wasn't really doing anything for so long. They get the Buccaneers, the Bengals, the Broncos, and the Jets coming up. 3 home games out of those 4. They do typically do better at home than away, even though they were shut down a lot by the Giants. I don't know. There's something that seems off with this offense. When you watch them, it's like the running game can't get going. I know James Cook came through with a fine fantasy day because of that receiving touchdown, but like he's not getting a lot of work on the ground. He's not really getting it done there. And Stephon Diggs was held to just 58 yards on 12 targets. I don't know. It's just not looking as pretty. There's something off there, but you just keep plugging them in and hoping they revive themselves. They will.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup this week in some ways against the Buccaneers, but easier in other ways where they should find their receivers finding a little bit more room to run here on Thursday night. But I'll tell you a couple of fundamental problems. This offensive line is not very good. And when Josh Allen gets a lot of pressure, he's going all over the place. He's just trying to improvise and make plays. And he sometimes just gets out of his element. He throws interceptions, gets a little sloppy. It just looks like off script, and they just can't do anything just standing still. So that's part of it. I mean, they really got into his face, the Patriots did, and that really contained him. And we saw that against the Giants, too. The Giants don't have a great pass rush, but said get in the face of Josh Allen, make him throw to other people. It's okay if Stephon Diggs has a game. Who else is going to step up consistently? And that's a concern. So I think they miss like that Cole Beasley type. I hate to say, just someone in the middle of the field that can get open quickly, right? If they need to convert, or even the Isaiah McKenzie type. They need one of those. So maybe they'll go out and get someone like Hunter Renfrow at the trade deadline or something. Someone like that would just stabilize things a little bit to beat that pass rush and really help, I think, and open up things elsewhere in that offense. So somebody to watch there with the Bills. I think they really need that dedicated slot receiver that Khalil Shakir and some of these other guys have not been so far. Now, last thing we'll talk about, 2 other struggling offenses, Packers and Commanders. Look, Jordan Love had to really battle to get those 2 touchdowns late. It was just not great. And the Commanders, that was just awful to watch here. So what's happening is 2 maybe young quarterbacks. There's film out there right now, right? They've played enough games. They've started. Defense is starting to understand how you can attack these guys, finding ways to put pressure on them. Sam Howell has been under duress the whole season. He's struggling to get the ball outside, right, and throw it outside. So you look at Jordan Love, and maybe he's telegraphing his plays and needs the running game. So I just think it's a case of 2 young quarterbacks, offensive lines that are not great. Keep that in mind. Seeing a lot of pressure, and then just kind of succumbing to that as teams kind of have the tape on them.
Yeah, so Jordan Love did come through with the 2 passing touchdowns. Still didn't have a great fantasy
Yeah.
day, especially in like a 4-point pass touchdown league. He's not that he doesn't get enough passing yards. His completion percentage isn't good this year. And like AJ Dillon led the team with 34 receiving yards. I mean, Christian Watson can't stay healthy. No, he like made it through that whole game besides that last drive where he got hurt, but he wasn't utilized nearly enough. I'm so annoyed I fell for the Christian Watson this week. I've never liked him. I don't know why I was on him this week, but yeah, Christian Watson can't stay healthy and he's just very inconsistent. And then you have Luke Musgrave who can't stay healthy, it seems like. The Aaron Jones, I don't know, can't stay healthy either. The hamstring, he wasn't used
Yeah.
nearly as much as he should have been. So that worries me. They do get the Vikings next week, so it's a great matchup. He's a viable option, but you don't feel great about his upside in any given week. Talking about Love's fantasy upside there. And I think the only guy you can trust playing in this offense is maybe Romeo Dobbs, and then you just keep plugging in Aaron Jones.
Yeah. I mean, AJ Dillon has looked not bad, but you're not getting a lot from him. I mean, it really takes him to squeeze out a lot of rushing yards and maybe score to get a
Like, he had
viable.
15 carries in this game and still
Yeah,
scored, like, what, like 8 points in
yeah,
PPR, so
it's really hard if you're just the guy carrying to get those points, and it's just not
yeah.
happening too much. With the
Wh
Commanders, Michelle, I just think again, eventually, if you are running around and facing that much pressure, it's going to be hard to push the ball downfield to anybody. And at least Terry McLaurin has kind of salvaged some numbers here, but I don't think he kind of has a plan. Sam Howell, he's just like, oh, I'm under pressure. I'm going to run around trying to make a play, and if I can't, I'm just going to take the sack. And
So this is the
I,
thing, Vinny. I like can't. He got sacked 6 times in this game.
yeah,
The Giants had 5 sacks all season long entering this game. The reason why I was comfortable playing Sam Howell, I mean, I said this multiple times, was that I didn't think the Giants would pressure Sam Howell that much because they haven't pressured anybody. So the fact that, like, I think it's partially the offensive line. It's a lot of Sam Howell holding onto the ball too long and not going. I don't know what he's doing, man. Like all around, like, I don't know what's going on there. But Terry McLaurin seems to have come along where he's that low end wide receiver 2 each week. Logan Thomas is still a viable option in PPR leagues at the tight end position. But Brian Robinson is losing a lot of work to Chris Rodriguez. He came through with a rushing touchdown, but that was it, really. I mean, he had 8 carries for 23 yards. I'm not loving this for him. And they get the Eagles next week. So fine matchup for Terry McLaurin, but I don't know if Ryan Robinson's playable next week.
yeah, I really don't know what they're doing with this Airbnb offense because you thought, okay, they're focusing on Logan Thomas and Curtis Samuel, and then those guys fade away. Then McLaurin's back, and they've never got Dotson involved. So it's just all over the place with the personnel and scheme here. And I thought we had a good read on it, but I don't know what to expect. I mean, they did put up some big numbers against the Eagles in a wild game the first time, but that tells me they're not going to do it a second time with a few things there. And the Eagles coming off a hot game against the Dolphins. So, yeah, I don't know if I can do that with the Commanders. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll talk about some better offenses that surprised us and pleased us in the same game in our final segment.
Yeah. So in our last segment here, we're going to be talking about the Rams duo wide receiver group and the Steelers wide
Yeah.
receiver duo group that actually came through surprisingly. And then we'll finish up the episode with some injuries that occurred. Luckily, it was a very low injury weekend. Love that for us in the NFL. So not too much to hit on there, but we'll talk about a couple guys after we hear from another one of our sponsors. This show is brought to you from FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. My favorite player prop on Monday Night Football is George Kittle, over 47.5 receiving yards against the Vikings. He didn't get to play on National Tight Ends Day, but I think he'll still want to celebrate it and have a huge day just a day late after National Tight Ends Day. But if you want to sign up, you just go to fanduel.com/lockedon and enjoy the NFL season. Again, that's fanduel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so I'm wearing my Steelers shirt today. I get a victory Monday. I get to celebrate. They won a game. It wasn't the grossest offensive performance of all time. Still wasn't pretty by the Steelers. Now, let's hit on the Rams side first because Cooper Kupp, I mean, really, really disappointed. Only had 2 receptions, 29 yards, and 7 targets. Puka Nacua, on the other hand, has 8 receptions, 154 yards, 12 targets. So this is kind of the opposite of last week, right? Where they both got the targets. Nacua did very, very little while Kupp went off. And now it was Nacua who went off this week with Kupp doing nothing. Is that what we're going to see from here on out? It's like they keep switching. Maybe defenses are focusing on one wide receiver over the other, or is this just coincidence that it happened in back-to-back weeks?
Well, I think Cooper Kupp had a couple drops, which was weird to see early in the
He
game.
did right in the beginning of the game. 2
Yeah, so
easy
like there could
drops.
have been a bigger game for him, but I don't know what happened. I think the Steelers did a good job scheming defensively coming out of the bye, and they said, okay, Puka Nacua is fine, but that matchup was great, right? You could streak him down the field, and I'm not saying it's very parallel because they're different type of offenses, and in one case, one of the receivers disappears, but Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, kind of like that, where we want to see, is it the slot? Is it the outside? Where do we want to go this week? And Sean McVay's smart enough to say, look, Puka has a great matchup. We're going to get him downfield. The speed is a problem. His physicality is a problem, a little bit maybe more so than Kupp in this matchup. But again, it's just the way the defense was designed. Of course, you're going to roll and try to contain Kupp first and let the rookie beat you. And I think it worked out, right? The Steelers ended up winning the game where they contained Kupp and Nacua got all his yards, but they ended up pulling away and winning. So I don't know if it's going to be week to week here because we did see the very first game that both of them produced. I think it just comes down to kind of where the flow of the game goes. And again, they've played a tough defense. So it'll be interesting to see. They play the Cowboys again. I don't think their secondary is all that great now beyond Trayvon Diggs being injured. So I think it's an opportunity maybe for both to get going. I think you'll also have a high volume. I don't think the Rams are going to be able to run the ball like they did against the Steelers. So that's going to open things up as well. So what we need, keep chucking Matthew Stafford. We want 40 to 50 attempts. When they start running effectively, that's bad news for these guys. We want enough volume where because then the targets are going to mainly go to these guys, right? A little bit of Tutu Atwell, very little of Tyler
No
Higbee.
one else had more than one reception in this game
So,
besides
as long as
Nacua
you get
and Kupp.
enough volume, I think it's going to work out. But sometimes if one guy's making all the plays and that's it, and they're containing, it's going to be there. But Kupp, I mean, look, you still have guys starting as a wide receiver 1 every week. Puka Nacua, I think he has a floor as a wide receiver 2. So, yeah, just be happy with that and go forward. And how about the Steelers? I think this was key. I think Deontay Johnson, I don't think people understood outside of Pittsburgh how important Deontay Johnson had to be to make George Pickens better, to make Kenny Pickett better. All of a sudden, he's there, another player that can get downfield, opens up the running game. Jalen Warren and Najee Harris both get into the end zone in this game. What was going on? This is like the Steelers offense. Maybe it just takes Matt Canada and Mike Tomlin a bye week to get going. I think this exact same thing happened last year, and they had all the offensive momentum. So that's really good. Unfortunately, look, it's a Jaguars matchup. But it is a beatable matchup, but maybe an opportunity there to keep this offense going if they can protect the ball.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to run against the Jaguars. I mean, the Jaguars against the run have been elite. And now I know they did get the run finally going, and now she finally did find the end zone, which I did call. I will say that he was going to score his first rushing touchdown this week. I don't see that happening against the Jaguars, right? So they're going to have to pass a lot. I don't think it's going to be pretty. The Steelers offense throughout the whole game wasn't really pretty. The fourth quarter that came along, they were getting it done more than usual. But, if they were it still wasn't an above average offensive performance. That's for sure. I love though to see Deontay Johnson looked completely healthy. He looked like himself, and it is so important to this offense because he actually can create space. He is a great route runner, and Pickens is more of that contested catch guy. So you need both, and really all the targets went Deontay Johnson or Pickens' way. So I think you just keep throwing them both in. It is a scarier matchup against the Jaguars, but like I said, I don't think they're going to be able to run. So unless I think they'll still have an opportunity to get a good amount of targets in this game.
Yeah, I think the key we'll watch to see if Tyson Campbell returns. That could change a little bit here in this matchup, how you might like the usage of these guys. But I think if you're desperate, I think you could look at Kenny Pickett potentially. The Jaguars are giving some quarterback. They're giving up some quarterback numbers, and you figure, I mean, Derek Carr, even though it was ugly, it ended up being a decent fantasy game at the end. So maybe you get 301 and maybe a rushing touchdown from Kenny Pickett, something like that.
Kenny Pickett has one career game with multiple touchdowns.
I'm just saying, if you're desperate in 2 QB leagues, remember how many guys are hurt, Michelle, at quarterback. There's not a lot.
There's no buys this week. You should be all right. There's no buys.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think the arrow's slowly pointing up for him. I thought he played well in tough moments, right? It wasn't easy. Rams defense went in there, won. And if he had gotten another one of those touchdowns, right, and got the rushing touchdown, if he got another one, he would have been okay. So I'm not saying he never does.
He never.
I'm not saying he's a QB1, but I'm saying he's at least a viable QB2 right now, which was not the case earlier. So something to look at with Kenny Pickett, but you just want him to facilitate. Now, unfortunately, we did hear about an injury that got worse. He was on track to play Pat Freiermuth. This was a great matchup for him by the numbers. The Rams had struggled against the tight end. So he, of course, aggravated his hamstring, so he's going to be out some more. I would ask the Steelers, why don't you try TJ Watt? He's pretty good at catching the ball. Try him at tight end, give him some opportunities. He's another guy in the red zone you can use. But that's an injury that we need to find a replacement for. If you were trying to wait for him to come back and help your team, that's one tight end option that's not available. The other injuries that happened on Sunday, Jerome Ford injury there in the game against the Colts. So Pierre Strong immediately came in for him behind Kareem Hunt. Hunt had the couple of touchdowns in that game. So we'll monitor Ford. He was, of course, a replacement to Nick Chubb, and now he's in doubt here. And the other notable injury wasn't really reported during the game, but after the game, Christian Watson, interesting knee issues here, and he's had a history of that. And Jane Reed could be an option there that you could pivot to, because he immediately came in and scored when Watson was out there. So I think, look, it was as good as it gets, right? When we have only 13 games, not too many injuries here, but still things you got to monitor. And I think we're going to be watching those, of course. But I think also one other thing that I would keep in mind, Michelle, is Kyler Murray. He did some work late last week and potentially coming back soon. And the way things are going with Josh Dobbs in that offense, I don't think it's soon enough at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Kyler's ready to go just yet, but I would love to see him back. I mean, that would be huge for Hollywood Brown and really just everyone in that offense. Of course, Amari DeMercado, we didn't even bring up, but of
Yeah.
course he got all the carries this week after not getting the workload the week prior. So Amari DeMercado might be on your waivers, which we'll get into tomorrow's show after doing nothing in week 7 or week 6, and then
You might be
actually
on the
getting
waiver
workload.
every other week at this rate.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we'll pick him up, drop him, pick him up, drop him. That's what it's going to be like. But yeah, at least one thing, Michelle, that I'm really happy about is that all the teams will be back in action here in week 8. So you don't have to reach as much for the waiver wire. But we'll still have some options for you there on tomorrow's show that you need to target, whether you're looking for short or long-term help for your fantasy football roster. And thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Again, we'll have waiver wire there for you on Tuesday as we flip the script to week 8. Then we'll look at the running back and quarterback rankings. Then we'll look at wide receiver, tight end. Close the week with DFS. And very successful week there, DFS with FanDuel and PrizePicks. So we'll bring that to you. That's what we do here every week on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.